So I think we can start at our last session, which is dedicated to the theme of the therapeutic role of beauty. And our first international guest is there virtually with us, unfortunately, but at least in somehow or some way. It's Father George Kondothra from India. You can see him, and there is a beautiful picture behind him, which is his picture. We will speak about it later. Father George is Orthodox Syrian priest, professor at Mahatma Gandhi University, also director of Sopana Orthodox Seminary, and many other roles. But apart from his theological career, he is also a painter and also a writer of poems. So we are very happy to have you here, and we are looking forward to your lecture, Father George.
Dear friends, sisters and brothers, warm greetings from India, from the southwest corner of India, the state of Kerala. I am asked to speak on the theme of art as therapy, dimensions of creativity, healing, and transcendence. All artists and art lovers know very well from experience that good art has healing potential. From cooking and gardening to painting and music, all forms of conceivable art play a therapeutic role in the lives of those who have some level of an immersion experience in it. The unique pleasure and satisfaction they derive from creating or enjoying works of art may indicate some states of internal well-being and resolution of psychological conflicts. Although in the history of art, there occasionally comes up the slogan, art for art's sake, most people would instinctively recognize the creative power of art for healing. Creative arts in their visual, auditory, and theatrical forms may reconcile polar opposites and remove psychological stress that builds up in individuals and communities. Now, systematic documentation on art therapy, even at the global level, is rather scanty. Art therapy is being employed as part of the psychotherapy, particularly as a complementary treatment of mental disorders in different parts of the world. The British Association of Art Therapists defines art therapy as a form of psychotherapy that uses art media as its primary mode of communication. The American Art Therapy Association is more elaborate. Quote, art therapy is an integrative mental health and human services profession that enriches the lives of individuals, families, and communities through active art making, creative process, applied psychological theory, and human experience within a psychotherapeutic relationship. Art therapy is used to improve cognitive and sensory motor functions, foster self-esteem and self-awareness, cultivate emotional resilience, promote insight, enhance social skills, reduce and resolve conflicts and distress, and advance societal and ecological change. It's a very comprehensive sort of definition. I'm a modest artist and a lover of art. So my own pain and joy while engaged in a creative work of art, and my occasional pastoral directing of some mentally ill persons to art therapeutic exercises have convinced me of the positive influence of creative art on our mental states. Of course, all subjective elements in the whole process cannot be easily documented in any scientific, objective way. Now, I will mention a few ways of art therapy which I have encountered in my past experience. The first one is a rather recent one, which is called the neurographic art. Some of you may be aware of it. A Russian psychologist called Pavel Hošek proposed in 2014 a therapeutic artwork on the basis of the amazingly intricate connections of the neural network in human brain. It is generally estimated that an adult human brain contains about 100 billion neurons or brain cells. They're all interconnected in the space between neurons by what are called synapses. Each synapse providing some 15,000 connections. Altogether, some 100 trillion electrochemical connections dot the brain's architecture. We know that they constantly send messages through neurotransmitters that regulate every cell of our body and its movements for specific actions. So from conscious states to deep sleep and back. So with all these connections, the brain, as they say, is the most complex piece of matter in the whole universe. Now, neurographic art suggests that by creating an intricate pattern of interconnecting lines on paper or any other convenient surface, the artist tries to imitate the neuronal connections in one's brain, thus bringing out the inner constraints that produces various emotions, feelings, and thought processes to concrete outer expression. The crisscrossing of lines generates a lot of sharp angles which need to be rounded off by ink or paint by the practitioner. This, for example, is an indirect way of setting our relationship right, forgiving those who hurt you, and smoothing out the rough edges of our psychological personality. You may fill all the spaces between the lines with appropriate colors that can produce a pleasant harmony in its totality. I am unable to show a neurographic piece of art right now, but later on in the actual presentation, I hope I can do that. The whole person who does this thus transmits the rhythm of relationship to the environment. Depending upon your imagination and creativity, you can create an original work of art on the basis of the outline of the neurographic design. In fact, any authentic work of art produces such effects on the brain, which is now understood to have the quality of neuroplasticity or ability for growth and reorganization, thus forming new neuronal connections and adapting to new learning in changing situations. Contrary to the traditional belief, neuroscientists now affirm that the network of neurons is not a fixed entity, but an ever-dynamic, self-renewing, and flexible phenomenon. The rewiring of the brain is possible. So with the neurographic art, we are stimulating the brain to create new bridges, new connections in our own brain. Secondly, I would mention the art of pareidolia. This is something known to us from our very childhood. The Greek word para, which means beside or alongside, and eidolon, image, form, or shape. So this is a psychological phenomenon of pareidolia, creating images out of our natural environment, out of the objects we see daily. As children, many of us have had this experience of finding human faces, animal shapes, and other familiar patterns in random objects like clouds, tree lines, hills, rocky formations, and such natural objects. I would remember even at the age of 5, I could see animals and birds and human beings in such things. Well, this may be the experience of many other people. And some people continue to experience this as adults. And so they are able to see meaningful images and shapes in ordinary objects. I wish to attribute great spiritual, theological, and political significance to this by referring to the biblical verse quoted by Jesus: the stone the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. In some of my own artwork, you have used very ordinary objects, sometimes rejected, useless objects, to become an integral part of an artwork. Thirdly, I would speak about sociotherapy. This is particularly important for me from my Indian context, where centuries of caste discrimination have rejected millions and millions of human beings created in God's image and likeness as objects to be brutally exploited, oppressed, and finally thrown out as dirty rubbish. This is the worst scenario of the caste system. Happily, in the post-colonial India, the constitution, the judiciary, and the democratic parliamentary system of governance have been laboring together to rectify this situation to a great extent. I'm happy to tell you that this is a continuing process with great effect. The social, political, and cultural resonance of attributing meaning and value to those who are rejected, marginalized, and deprived of human dignity can be relevant to similar situations across the world. In our world, still haunted by specters of slavery, racial discrimination, oppressive regimes, economic exploitation, forced migrations, war and weapon trade, the attributive method followed by discerning artists in pareidoliac art can be therapeutic for society as a whole. Fourthly, I would speak about cosmotherapy. At a wider level, we can recognize, in the sense of deep ecology, everything in our environment, the so-called new non-human world that includes all creation, as having its inherent value when we attribute pareidoliacally meaning and value to it. It's making our whole environment familiar, friendly, and homely by attributing a face to everything inorganic and material. In ecological parlance, the whole environment that surrounds us is our home, or oikos, the root word for ecology. The eco-friendliness that we wish to advocate in our age of global eco-malignancy of all sorts, like climate change, can be artistically conveyed through pareidolia. This can be immensely therapeutic at the cosmic level when we are able to restore the original harmony of all creation. I'm sure proponents of deep ecology, like the late Arne Næss of Norway, would have been very happy at this suggestion. To save time, I'm omitting some parts of my presentation. In the art of pareidolia, the artist may follow the clues provided by nature itself. In painting, for instance, the inherent tendency of a liquid paint to flow, or a watercolor to spread randomly, gives the lead to the artist and help them unveil surprising feats of creativity. Wood and stone, clay and crystals as medium can provide their own inherent clues. And I rejoice in working with this style and technique. Now, coming to the part of theology, let me speak a little bit about the kenosis and creative self-losing in theology and art. The losing of oneself in the act of creation has a deep theological resonance. Paul the Apostle teaches us about the self-emptying kenosis of God in Christ. It's a difficult concept to understand in our normal human logic. I always think that some Buddhist sages and scholars, with their core idea of shunyata or emptiness, will be more insightful than many Christian theologians on the theme of kenosis. But Paul is deliberately using this expression in order to get us a momentary glimpse of the mystery of God's incarnation in Christ, who became a humble human being for our sake. I would dare to suggest that an artistic perspective might help us to be a little more perceptive about the ineffable and incomprehensible kenotic mystery. The true artist loses himself or herself in the act of creation. Harry Michael, a Finnish researcher in the history of aesthetics and phenomenology, in a recent article titled "When Art Transports Us, Where Do We Actually Go?" deals with the self-forgetfulness of the artist. He begins his article by citing a Chinese legend about Wu Daozi, an 8th century artist who painted a superb landscape and then walked into it and just vanished. In an immersive aesthetic experience, the creator of art undergoes a self-forgetfulness, even though it may last only for a brief time. Space and time are eliminated in this transformative experience. The phenomenon of self-transportation or self-losing is not anything new in human experience. Some streams of aesthetics in India, like the Tantric tradition, would almost equate three things: the spiritual blissfulness of union with the ultimate, the blissfulness called Ananda, the rapturous self-losing in genuine sexual union, the blissfulness of Ananda, and the ecstasy of merging or dissolving in art and poetry. Again, the blissfulness of Ananda. Now, alcohol and psychedelic drugs may provide moments of self-forgetful highs, though the consequences could be very damaging for the subject and society in the long term. I still remember reading many years ago the book of the American Austrian sociologist Peter Berger's book, The Rumor of Angels, where he speaks about signals of transcendence. Our play, our human humor, and many other things can transport us beyond the ordinary logic and sense experience to the level of transcendence, or he calls them signals of transcendence. Finally, the therapeutic, speaking about the therapeutic dimension, I would mention my own mentor and teacher, Paulos Mar Grigorios, an exceptionally brilliant and polymath, philosopher, theologian, who used to say, the whole heals. He has also written a book with the title, The Whole Heals. According to him, healing follows restored and right relationships. He is very critical of people like Deepak Chopra for their failure to take relationship as central and for focusing too heavily on the individual and his or her overcoming aging and sickness, entropy and death. According to Mar Grigorios, quote, true relationship is community, but the center is not in the one or the other, but in the whole. He recognizes the crucial role of several non-medical psychosocial factors, including art, music, theater, spirituality, family, and community in the process of healing, and calls for a new paradigm of medical anthropology, which will take into account alternate and traditional healing systems, along with modern pharmacology and Western allopathic disciplines. To come to the conclusion, I would say that art, though we can only perceive it in specific forms of expression, is inherently holistic and transcends all fragmentation. Every creative artist taps rather unknowingly into a common pool of reality and brings out a specific work that opens for us amazingly new dimensions of reality. In this sense, we uphold the universal and holistic dimension of creative art. In the examples I cited above, like neurographic and pareidolia approaches, the meditative process, as well as the culmination of that process in the emergence of an aesthetically pleasing holistic picture, brings out a healing. The human system as a subsystem of the universe is a microcosm. The Greek philosophers and the ancient Indian philosophers used almost the same expression of microcosm in different languages. But taking into account human freedom, will, creativity, and such particularly human anthropological traits, we can call the human being as a macrocosm, a great universe. And according to the best of Eastern Christian patristic tradition, like in Saint Gregory of Nyssa and others, they would boldly call human being as macrocosm rather than a microcosm. Any authentic form of art as expression of human creativity, freedom, and will for the good can recreate the universe. And any recreative art act is a therapeutic act as well. Creative redrawing of our perception of reality and the physical redrawing of our neuronal network can be complementary to each other. Art may provide the clue for this process. Thank you very much for your patience. God bless you. Okay.
Yes, now we can see you and hear you.
Can you see me?
Yes.
Okay, that's fine. Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
My gratitude goes to my friend Katharina Bauer for this invitation, and also to my new friend Shengo for recording my presentation days ago.
Yeah, it's nice. We have also record of the video before you managed with Denko, so we can hear it again. Thank you very much. And you had some pictures for us, Father George, to show. Yes, is it right?
Can I say a word about? The title of this painting, which is a big painting, The Fish Body. A year and a half ago in New Delhi, we had very desperate scenes of people infected by COVID, rushing for oxygen cylinders and ventilators, which were in shortage. At that time, I painted this. For me, the whole humanity as one body is searching for light and air, rising from the depth of the ocean and going up. And you see there are hundreds and in principle thousands of fish, but they all form one single body. So this is a fish body representing humanity in its search for life and light. Okay, maybe another picture. If this is a very Indian picture. You know, you heard about the great farmers' strike, particularly from the state of Punjab, and thousands of farmers were in the streets for about a year to delete some of the rules created by the government, which were anti-farmer, according to them. Finally, after their struggle, the government completely withdrew the regulation. So I represent a man and a woman. Actually, this is a typical of the people of the Punjab. The man's beard has become a sort of granary, and the woman's shore is extended to become a uterus. So they are apparently sad, but they keep the hope for the future, for the food grains and the sprouting seeds. So this is symbolic and very much in the context of the farmer struggle. Yes. Yeah, there are other symbols which I don't interpret now. No, thank you. Thank you. Well, these are two Syrian sisters. Many years ago, when I was in Syria, I took this picture. Later on, when I came back to India, I thought I would make a painting out of that picture. So these the faces do not represent the actual persons, but they were both working in the kitchen for us. So I call it Martha and Martha, not about Martha and Maria. Incidentally, one sister is holding a bread which would be used for the Eucharistic celebration, and the other sister is holding a bottle of wine. I think I did it rather innocently, but a friend of mine asked me if this is a prediction for the feminine priesthood in your church. Well, I didn't say anything. Thank you. Thank you. Well, this is a draft picture of a. Can you turn it around to the left side? Then go. Yes. Yes. No. No. Okay. Doesn't matter. Well, this was an experiment in what I once again upside down. Okay, yeah, okay, this is how. So I was doing an experiment in neurographic art. My point in the presentation was that it was therapeutic, according to the original proponent of the neurographic art. But you can be very creative with that. But you need a lot of patience, and in the process of your patient work, you are healed. That is the point. Okay. I have many other things, but I don't know your time. So at the moment, I just showed only three things. Yes. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for accepting the invitation. You finally decided the order of your reactions, responses. So, first guest I can invite among us is Gabriela Ďurašková, she studied theology and also psychology, and at the moment she works as a clinical psychologist at the hospital Motol. So it will be the first reaction to Father George talk. Thank you very much, Gabriela. Do we need to switch on the... Thank you.
Okay. So, firstly, I would like to thank to Father Kondothra for his lecture. It was very interesting. And I am really grateful for the topic which tried to connect current psychotherapeutic practice with topics of theology. But I was asked by Professor Ivana Noble to say something to your or his speech from the psychologist's perspective. So it's maybe a different perspective. And I, as Katerina said, I work at the University Hospital as psychologist and psychotherapist, and I work at the Department of Psychiatry. So I treat adults, adolescents, and child, and I use art therapy in my work as one of the tools to help the whole therapeutic process. So this is how I approach my response to this lecture, and I will rely only on my psychological and psychotherapeutic practice. So the first thing that came to my mind during this speech was the relationship between art therapy, as we know it in our practice, and beauty. Because I don't know how is it in India, but here in the Czech Republic, we often have a problem that many people don't want even enter therapeutic work with painting or drawing, because they have doubts that they are not gifted, that they don't have talent to use this type of work. They experience from their childhood or from school that their pictures were criticized from the aesthetic point of view. So they don't believe in themselves that they are able to paint or draw. So we must emphasize them and say them that art therapy is mostly about the self-expression or the process of creation, and that the aim of art therapy is not to make some kind of beautiful picture. And it's really hard for them to understand it, that there is a difference between this type of work. And really, in my experience, that despite this instruction, some people still have problem to immerse into the art therapy process, because they still have in their mind and they still think that they have to create a beautiful picture. And this really inhibits the whole therapeutic process. And to be honest, it's true that some of the pictures from art therapy are not very often beautiful in the aesthetic sense. But even though these ugly pictures still have a really big value from the therapeutic point of view, because we can see that this work with art can really help to heal the patient. So I don't know if art therapy is about beauty at all. It's about healing, but is it about beauty? So maybe it is, but it's about some other beauty. As already Ivana said at the beginning of the conference, that there may be some different types of beauty. And I would call this beauty, which we are looking for in art therapy, maybe the beauty of authenticity, or the beauty of authentic self-expression. But this beauty, which comes from depth of the soul, is not very often, does not very often correspond with the aesthetic beauty. So actually I don't know what is beauty, but and I was thinking if it is really important, if there is something what is healing, does it have to be beautiful? I think that it doesn't have to be beautiful. And on the contrary, if everything what is beautiful, if it is always healing. So that was one point. And I have one other. As I listened to Father's Kondothra lecture, I began to wonder if it was really art or what heals the patient, if it is really art itself what heals the patient. Because the way how we use art therapy here in our condition, it's always a part of the whole process of therapy. So when we use art therapy, there is always one principle present, and this principle is that psychotherapy is always relational. There is always relationship between patient and therapist, or between, if we talk about group therapy, there are many relationships between patient and other patient and therapist. But psychotherapy is relational, and it's important. And when the patient starts with his artwork, he or she always expects that there will be someone who will be interested in his or her work. And the patient draw or paints the picture with this expectation that there will be someone who will look at his picture, who will try to understand his picture. And I think in this way of use, art is much more a form of communication. It's a different communication. We don't use words. We can go maybe deeper or somewhere else. But it's a form of dialogue. It's a form of dialogue between two people, at least. So I am not sure what is the thing, or I don't know how to say it in English, what is really healing here. If it is this dialogue through art, if it is this relationship, what heals the patient, or if it is the art itself, what can heal the patient. My question is that would artwork itself, that is not shown to anyone, would it be also healing? And how I was thinking about it, that maybe yes, maybe there is some kind of dialogue between individual and art, between individual and a sort of beauty. But I don't know. And maybe the last point, because we are at a theological conference, so I can say that in art therapy and in psychotherapy at all, there is a big space where we don't know who heals the patient, but maybe it's the space for God who heals. I don't know. So that's all from my part.
Thank you very much. So now the second response will be from Pavel Hošek, Professor Pavel Hošek, who is based at the Protestant Theological Faculty, our colleague, friend, and the head of the Department of Religious Studies, prolific author of many books. Pavel, floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I thank Father George for his presentation. In fact, it made me think a lot, and what I'm going to present is actually a series of comments. So my first comment was actually nearly identical with what we heard about the healing or therapeutic effect of art and art therapy, because my very limited understanding would suggest that whatever blessing or positive healing, therapeutical effect might come does not really have any necessary relationship with the beauty of the artifact. Or in fact, I would almost even push it further. knowing myself and what I paint when I am very angry and depressed and upset, it's actually a very ugly artifact which helps me to process emotions. And beauty is not really involved at all in the whole process. It is more about authentic expression, but sometimes an authentic expression of an ugly content. And sometimes the more ugly, the more it helps somehow. Yeah, so this is just something that sort of kept coming to my mind as I was following Father George's presentation, as I was reading its written form, that there definitely is some kind of potential therapeutical effect of people expressing whatever they have in their souls, or whatever struggles or even positive experiences we have in our hearts, but I just don't know for sure what relationship between such an expression and love and beauty there is. So that is just something to think about. Another related idea which kept coming to my mind as I was following Father George's presentation was this perspective on art as authentic expression, and in contrast to that, art as a creative way of perception of something that is not really produced by the artist, but what is perceived by the artist, or what is somehow, as John Ronald Reuel Tolkien would phrase it, perceived by the imagination as an instrument of seeing, of perceiving, of discovery, of exploration. In other words, sure, there is this creative aspect in the process of making art, and definitely there is always this dimension of authentic self-expression, but Tolkien would warn everybody not to make an idol out of authenticity of expression. In other words, and that relates very much, I think, to what Father George was describing as this readiness of the artist to sort of step aside. Exactly. Thank you. Yeah, to let something be expressed through him or her, or to just open space for the vision to come and be, of course, creatively expressed, but it's not the artist's invention necessarily. That's something I find very, very difficult to understand, and very interesting and inspiring to think about. Another idea which came to my mind as Father George was speaking about the sociotherapy, and he was speaking about the ugliness of social injustice, and throughout the experience, throughout the conference, we touched on this several times. Is it necessarily so that evil is ugly, that injustice is ugly, and that justice is beautiful, or that moral good is beautiful? Because I think there is a sense of deep commonality between good and beautiful, and ugly and evil, but it is a different sort of beauty. I would think, we all know the images of firemen trying to save somebody from a burning house, and the picture may be ugly, and the person who is heroically and sacrificially trying to save someone else's life and perhaps dying in the process of it, it might be ugly from the visual aesthetic point of view, yet it is beautiful in a different sense of the word. This is noble and morally beautiful, even though it may not be appealing aesthetically at all. Actually, the opposite. It's kind of, when we look at Christ on the cross, in one sense, it is a tortured human being being executed. It is a murder, yet there's a sense of beauty which is different than what we normally mean by the word. And yeah, so when I was thinking about this vision of trying to transform the society to be beautiful in this moral sense, or in this different than just visual sense, that I think is really worth meditating on. So as I was carefully listening to Father George's presentation, I think the word beauty, the concept of beauty, or what we mean by beauty, took different meanings and different emphasis of meaning in the different areas of therapy or art therapy he was talking about. When he spoke about cosmotherapy and referred to the original harmony of creation, I rejoiced because I happen to love wild nature very much. At the same time, I was reminded by the fact that, when you look at a parasite eating its host body, or when you look at a lion devouring an antelope, is it beautiful? Or is it ugly? Or is it a wrong sort of question? I think sometimes we tend to romanticize or misrepresent nature with its dark or harsh elements, because it's not always that uplifting and beautiful and charming as sometimes we present it. I'm just wondering, how about predators eating other animals? I kind of find it difficult to see it as beautiful, but yeah, it's just another comment to this cosmotherapy as it was described in the presentation. How does it teach us to specify the meaning of the word beauty and its healing or therapeutic effects on our thinking? And perhaps the last thing which I would like to say, and it brings me back to Tolkien again. He is actually talking about art in several different meanings of the word, which I think is good to distinguish. Art as creative expression, which is probably the most common understanding of art. Creative expression, or even creative self-expression. But he would insist that there is always also some creative perception in art. There is something that comes to the artist, or that is perceived, seen by the artist, and then the expression is not just his own or her own invention. And third, he speaking about the phenomenology of reading, he's actually inviting each reader to work together with him as an active participant in creating another very unique version of Middle Earth. When we read and read Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, we co-create the Middle Earth on the basis of what the artist is offering us and inviting us to, and on the basis of our own experience and whatever we bring to the act of reading. And then my Middle Earth is different than yours. And so there are as many Middle Earths as there are readers. And I find that fascinating because it sort of underlines this active response to art. It makes me as a reader not just receiver but participant and co-creator of the literary world. And perhaps it bridges the gap between art as creative expression and art as creative perception or creative appreciation of beauty which somehow is out there, which is somehow not produced by the seer, but seen, perceived. So thank you again, Father George, for your very stimulating presentation.
Thank you very much. And our third guest is, they decided who is the final one. Pavel Pola, a friend of ours, student at the Protestant Theological Faculty, and as you probably already noticed, one of the Carmelite brothers here. So thank you, Pavel.
Thank you once again, Father George, for your inspiring and insightful paper. I would like to do my response in 3 steps. In the first step, I would like to highlight some of the accent that I consider very inspiring or that I liked most. In the second step, I would express some questions that this article brought to me and questions that arised when I listened to Father George conference. And in the third step, I would like to offer some possibilities of further development of this topic. So what I especially appreciated on Father George approach is his wide concept of not wild, maybe also wild, yeah. But I originally I thought wide concepts of the art, of the therapy, of and his connections between various camps of the science. So the concept of art, maybe as you noticed, he considered art also the cooking and gardening and the neurographic art that he uses probably in his therapeutical work, which is maybe a little bit technical, but it's playful and I liked the image we saw. And also the pareidolia, which is a style of art that brings us to the childhood, because it activates our imagination, and we can see, as it was said yesterday, the dragons when we open the door. And also he defines the art as expression of human creativity, freedom, and will for the good. And I consider it very nice ingredients of art: the creativity, freedom, and will for good. Ingredients from which the art is cooked, I would say. Then I also appreciate his wide concept of therapy, that it's not only the personal therapy on the physical level as we imagine for the first time when we speak about healing, but it's also, as he says, that the art has the positive influence on our mental states, and he describes it in the neuroscientific way also. How does it go? But it doesn't mean simply that healing is putting away of the symptoms of a disease, but it's a development of a person, in Father's approach, as also the title said. And but he also touches not only the personal level, but also the society, as also Pavel Hošek said, the restoring of relationships as a healing process to which the art can contribute. He speaks even about the cosmotherapy, which he defines as a deep ecology, and I like this because it's in harmony with the Pope Francis emphasis, who speaks about the care of our common home in his encyclical Laudato Si', but in many of his speeches. So this wide concept of therapy seems to me very inspirational, not to think only about my own health and my own development, because we are not isolated. We are in connection not only with the others, but also with the cosmos. So the health of the whole creation is our matter. And Father George connected it, as I understood his conference. And I appreciated the connections with the psychology, neurology, sociology, and his holistic approach, as I understood his words. And I liked also a little notion. I don't know whether you noticed it, but he says, for example, that the Buddhistic concept of nothingness can help us, the Christianity, to understand the concept of kenosis. And it's maybe a little bit provocative, but that's I consider it very nice and useful. Second, what are my questions that arise from this conference? When I yesterday evening in the pub spoke to Norbert Schmidt, who had the conference yesterday here, and I only pronounced the topic of today's block, art as a therapy. He said, "No, it's impossible. No, art it's misused of the art," and that's a pity that he cannot be here. But maybe the first question would be whether the therapy is or should be the main goal of the art or the side effect, and it can form the approach to the art, I think. And I don't think only on the art therapy as a specific psychotherapeutical process, but the approach to the art. Maybe when we do the main goal from the art as a therapy, we can lose it. We can lose the art. But it's the question. I let it as a question. The second question is every art therapy, or if not, what kind of art is therapeutical? What qualities must art have to be therapeutical in this wild sense, as Father George presented? He speaks about good art, which is also the term that Norbert Schmidt was a little bit angry with, but he said it's not possible to say good art. But what does it mean? And when I heard the good art, the term good art, it came to my mind the concert of Rammstein that maybe you know that was in Prague this week on Monday or Sunday and Monday, the German music group, and it was very well visited, 60,000 people, and also for the good price. And I asked why do people go there? Because I don't know whether you know it, but at the first sight, it seems very negativistic music. We can even ask whether it is beautiful or whether it is a nice art. Their topics are like hatred, sexual violence, abuses in the church, even cannibalism, fatal accidents. So why do people go for a concert to listen about these topics, and maybe also in very hard form of the hard music? And I read one commentary and which explains it, like maybe also Pavel mentioned it, that the art that heals hasn't to be beautiful, it can be ugly, but because it helps us to express our negative emotions and our tensions, and perhaps this is the reason why the people go there, and they can experience the negative emotions in a relatively safe way on the concert, and not to kill anybody or not to destroy it, but to express it, and this is the healing potential also of this art, which we maybe or not everybody would call a good art. And other question is whether the good art is always therapeutical, whether it always has this healing potential. It can, but it hasn't to heal when two people goes to the same concert or to the same therapy, to the same gallery. One is touched and healed maybe, or enriched, but the other not. And how come that it doesn't function so automatically? And also the example of the artists that lived very harmed lives, torn artists or cursed poets, or some artists that suffered and even committed suicide out of despair, but the artworks they let here are nice and of the great value, and we appreciate it after a lot of time. So how come that they weren't healed by what did they created, and they were maybe destroyed by not by the art, but even with this sensitivity, maybe the sensitivity that was this heavy by and the other question for me is, okay, when we can look to the art as a therapy, how come that has this healing effect? Father George proposed one mechanism, the neurological, that it has effects on our neurons and the neuroplasticity of our brain, and he went through this way, and I think that it's one way to explain it, and there is a book even called How God Changes Your Brain, and it's the book of two neurologists, neuroscientists, and they say that the faith and the rites and spiritual practice and images of God has this impact on the physically on our brain, and of course it could be one of the ways to express it, but I think that it doesn't explains everything. And I liked in the conference of Father George three, maybe it's not a concept, but three words that he uses in this context of healing potential of art, and it was the kenosis, the transcendence, and the whole. And he tried to describe with these concepts the process of healing, kenosis as losing oneself while creating, or transcendence as a space that is opened by art, a new dimension that can be touched by art, or the whole that is represented for us by the art in some sense. So the question is whether the art work as therapy automatically, or what is required from the side of man, or what are the conditions to be fulfilled so that the encountering the art is therapeutic. And the last point is that some topics that I think, or some further development of this topic that could be done. One of this also already mentioned Pavel, and I think that Father George forget one art, which is the literature, and Pavel Hošek was how to say in your no. I like in the word you are looking for this beautiful. No. I like one word in your approach when you are examining Tolkien, and it's the word enchantment, the wandering. That is, I think, one of the it's a part of this process that can lead to healing, and it's the Tolkien's maybe Tolkien's concept or his goal of literature that should enchant or should raise this this sense of wonder for us. I had the quotation here, but we don't have so many time. But I think that it's one of the healing power of the stories, which is also connected to this topic. The other is that the art can lead us to the true contact with the deep reality. And I have in mind Olivier Clément, who has a thesis that we are not in touch with our own depths, with our own deep heart, as he calls it, but this deepness of our own deepness opens only in flashes, in situations of love, beauty, and death, he says. So the art can be one of these moments when we can experience ourselves, our deep selves. And it could be healing, I think. And the third point already mentioned Gabina, and it means the question whether is it art what heals or is it anything else. And as she already said, that it's the interpersonal relationships or encounters that are healing, and maybe the art could be a medium of such encounter, not only between the artist and who look or listen or taste the art, but it could be a medium with some encounter which we cannot name such directly, but a kind of encounter which is healing. And my last question is whether also theological could or should be therapeutical in this sense. Maybe we touch it. Whether should we consider it its goal? Because the therapy and salvation maybe is a little bit similar concept. So I would like to do the therapy which would be theology which would be therapeutical, and therapy which would be theological, because it is beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm not sure if Father George is still there, but many greetings. I'm not sure if you heard responses. Hello. So, hello and bye, Father George. Okay.
Yeah, hello. Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you for all responses again. And now we are coming nearly to the conclusion of our conference. I think we can have a short break now before this. We can have 5 minutes break, and then there will be the final discussion, and then there will be lunch. And so thank you again. Thank you for your questions, and you can discuss it further over the lunch or in the afternoon or the rest of your life. So thank you very much again.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, bye. Okay. Bye.
Come to the final part of our conference, and I'm really glad that you survived that long and your faces still look alive and you still have smiles and stimulating questions. What we will do now in this final session is that we will return to the beginning. I think it's Origen who says that the end is the beginning. So this is what we will do, and I will ask in reversed order my fellow introductory speakers just to give us a couple of reflections on the conference, on our theme as a process. And then we will gradually open it to some other main speakers and then to all of you. So Anne-Marie, would you like to start?
Carl Gustav Jung famously spoke of synchronicity, and I have been struck by the convergence of ideas, categories, illustrations, authors quoted by speakers. So for instance, Paola Morelli with The Beauty of the Sea in Ambrosius, and Father George painting a body or a school of fish. Now, in Dutch, we say a school of fish. Do you say that in English too? A school?
Fish doesn't go to school in our country.
So, in Dutch, fish live, it's like you say a herd of geese. A show, okay. A show. I prefer school. For my illustration, it was better to say school.
But our geese go to school.
So it's very interesting to see the words for collective, like a herd of geese, etc. But anyway, that painting also then made me think, of course, of the Leviathan. So that makes you think of the body politic. And that strand maybe of art and the art of living together as a body politic was one of the aspects that was maybe that could have been more visible and that maybe needs to be more reflected still. Father George and I both spoke of the ancient speculation about the correlation between the microcosm and the macrocosm. And in Panikar, you find the ternary of cosmo-theandric dynamism. And I talked about deep space to correlate outer space and the inner consciousness, about which we spoke about a lot this morning. Now, because I expected to be wedged in between a neurologist and a mathematician, I thought I had to find a language to bridge the disciplines, and the language of numbers is such a language. And even without neurology and mathematics being physically present, numbers did prove their universal importance in architecture and the sacred arts, the golden number. And without consulting each other, Norbert Schmidt and I both showed a glass window by Henri Matisse. Also, without planning, prior to our presentations, Martin Flaschar and I both referred to the astronomer and cosmologist John D. Barrow, the playful universe and the constants of nature from Alpha to Omega. And that subtitle, From Alpha to Omega, you also just spoke of the prote and the arche, brings us to Teilhard de Chardin, a thinker mentioned by Geza Thiessen and also several other speakers, Gigi among them. And finally, when I chose the soundtrack for the little clip, after I had chosen it, I saw that the title was Modlitba in Polish. And then I realized that the word for prayer is the same in Czech and Slovak and Polish. You say modlitba, modlitwa. So that also, I think, is a very happy synchronicity. Thank you.
Now I will pass the microphone to Jiří. I'm sorry that we don't have the swimming pool here where we were sitting when we were thinking about the conference. But there is other kind of beauty around, and the element of water may go instead of outside, inside.
Thank you very much. It's not easy to me to speak now about the conference, during the conference. Yeah, I need some distance, 1 week or 2 weeks. I will speak rationally about conference, but I have 3 notes. They are rather personal suggestions. So the first, my comment concerns the war in Ukraine. Before this conference on beauty, I was thinking most about war, about how war destroys human lives and our civilization, including beautiful things. About a week before the conference, I learned that the Museum of Hrihory Skovoroda, a Ukrainian philosopher and poet who taught poetics and had interesting insights into the symbolism of biblical language, had been destroyed. So it seems to me then that beauty is a fragile and uncertain thing. A beauty and harmony can be destroyed, trampled upon, and unacknowledged. And seems to me the problem of the destruction of beauty seems to me at this moment important and essential now. So at the beginning we had 2 goals with Ivana, maybe by the sea. in Greek, and then. So we had two goals for the conference, or so I understood. Yes. the first was to talk about beauty in the concept of and context of an anthropological perspective. This intention didn't work very well, but our second goal, to present beauty in various other aspects, including practical examples, was all the more fulfilled. I will remember this meeting for the variety of different sub-approaches, most culturally artistic. From biblical theologian perspectives, the example of the ruined servant of God in Isaiah, who had neither form nor beauty, appealed to me most. This aspect, again, leads me to a certain sensitivity to what is happening around us now. So this conference had some happy moments for me, maybe surprisingly. So, I have such an associative mind, and yesterday, as Martin Flashal's lecture on subjectivity and objectivity in art, I remembered Woody Allen's film Love and Death, where the two main characters argue in a Russian barn about Hegelian philosophy. In this context, perhaps I would recommend further exploring our theme of beauty in the context of liberating laughing or laughter, the therapeutic influence of laughing, of joy. I was just wondering if we take beauty too seriously. So, I would also like to add that what I liked about this conference was that it was not like the classic conferences I know. A conference with a very narrow focus, with only specialists arguing about the details of their research. I guess I would call this conference a soft conference, as opposed to hard conferences. That said, I found it very enjoyable, very refreshing, a kind of conference recreation in the best sense of the word. Thanks to this recreation in Prague, I may even like to see the holidays. So I wanted to thank you all for the friendly environment as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jiří, also for your reflections. I suppose I will say also a couple of my own ones. I think of something which I haven't mentioned so far, what was going on in my mind as a measuring stick against what we were talking about, was another experience of a beauty that I just couldn't take. I mean, I very occasionally walk out from churches, sometimes I do it, even less frequently from theaters or cinemas. And this was one example when I walked out of cinema, and it was the film Perfume. I do not know if anybody of you have seen it. This is a film about a perfectionist who manages to produce really beautiful perfume. But during the film you found out how he kills people in order to produce it. And this is depicted very beautifully. And I was physically sick. I couldn't take it, and so I just walked out. And I was thinking that this was an example for me when the beauty or the beautiful and the good is not related together, and it was not merely an aesthetical statement. I think it was a negative experience of negative beauty. Like occasionally people can have negative religious experiences. And I don't buy the Persian dualism, but I think that this was one of the limit experiences for me. It was a different experience to Mel Gibson's Passions. I didn't walk out from that film, which I regretted afterwards, but I was swearing the whole way home, because there the violence of the cross was aestheticized. I think it was the suffering servant just puts its head as if it would be something beautiful that God desires. And as I told you before, that I deal quite often in spiritual direction with people who experience such massage by very unhealthy religion or spirituality. So I think these were my two counter-examples to what we were talking about. Then I was glad to see that the Aristotelian Platonic controversy is still alive and that it would probably survive us, and to hear that well, I was not actually that pleased to hear it, that beauty is seen as the social construct. But then I remember a conversation with Andrei in the corridor, and I really liked it. Thank you for that. When you mentioned that during this conference we don't let ourselves to be imprisoned by concepts, which at the negative side may mean the lack of conceptual precision, but I didn't take it from Andrei that way. I took it more that it's the lack of imprisonment in concepts, or what Wittgenstein calls meditating the concepts, because sometimes I think in the hard academic writings we do that and it makes it lifeless. I mean, don't get me wrong, conceptual precision is important, but we don't define life before we live it. I was glad that people were, different presenters were willing to move beyond that, to experiment, to seek for new ideas and approaches, how to grasp what really moves us on our human journey and the journey together. And also another thing which I was very grateful, and it came from the beginning, from both of your talks, till the end, where it was very strongly present for me. And this was the communal dimension, which is not collectivist. Because I think theological collectivism, religious collectivism, although we don't call it like that, is well spread. But I very much liked when Gabriela mentioned whether the art has the therapeutic value on its own, or whether you need to share it with someone. And it brought me back many years ago when I was teaching art to deaf children. And one of the girls that had lots of problems there started to paint very, very strange, abstract pictures. But they were in a way beautiful, and her classmates started to admire her for that. And this was the only thing which they admired for a long time. And when I met the mother sometimes after that, she told me that she doesn't understand what happened, but that her daughter hasn't been ill for half a year, and that this didn't happen throughout her going to school. But I was thinking about that there was the community also. They were the other children. There was another beauty, but the other beauty would not be enough to reach there. And I think I was so sorry that Father George couldn't sort of walk around us here, and you could have had coffee with him, and he would probably take out of his pocket some funny artifact which he would just find during the walk. But I hope that this will happen some other time. The moving beyond the conceptual slavery and not giving up the conceptual precision was one thing. Then the transcendent and the communal dimensions of beauty was another important thing. As Jiří mentioned, we really planned and desired a big interdisciplinary debate with mathematicians, natural scientists, anthropologists, and then they went by one by one. So we had some interdisciplinarity. We had history. I was very glad that Anne-Marie could bring also her other expertise in astrophysics here. We had the art historians and we had even some, even if more popular talk on the social space as a category that may involve beauty. So there has been some elements of that. But I think most of all, I have enjoyed the really genuine human search and the community, which is here also, that searches together and which I think at least helps me to see that what I do together with others still excites me. And I think Kateřina, Tim, Zdenko, and František and his team who are not here, and many others, and Petra, they have been such an important part of that journey. There will be some other time for thanks, which I do not want to move this way, but I think I will stop here. This would be the important points for me that I would take with me. But I would like maybe now to ask Geza, Petra, Paola, who some of the other main speakers, and then anybody else who would like to say a couple of words for the closing. Would you like that, Geza?
Thanks very much, and thank you to everyone. It has been one of the nicest conferences I've ever been at. I've totally enjoyed it. And I very much agree with all of what you said beforehand. I enjoyed very much that everybody was really trying to grapple with the question, but not just rehearsing old concepts, but to look at beauty from all sorts of different angles. I think it was done in a very gentle and very sincere manner, so that I really enjoyed. And when I just looked now again at the little presentation, I just thought, the beauty of nature, and there is this old idea of the artist as God's co-creator, and it goes back to Augustine, and it was also very much cherished by the Romantics, and you look at all the art there, you say, well, okay, yes, we are only co-creators. We can never be better because God has already done all that beauty. And, we can do further and make further art, but it certainly shone through, I think, in that presentation. So it was very refreshing. It was not an, hard and boring conference. It was life-giving and chanting. And yeah, the sense of, seeing that other people had so much overlap and at the same time brought something to it. It was very encouraging to keep on searching and to keep on thinking about beauty. It's a very deep desire in us, beauty, and it's good to think about it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the word. I have just one remark, and you, Ivana, said it already. When you are talking about the slavery of concepts, I like it very much. And I like to say, or I like to strengthen it. Yeah? The conference was very interdisciplinary, with a huge amount of perspectives and approaches, and it gave me, or it has given me an opportunity to realize several times that the beauty is something what what we experience suddenly, or what comes to us from the side somehow, yeah. And sometimes we can almost touch it, but sometimes we just see it for a very short time or glimpse it. And I think that this experience, the beauty, can bring us into a different reality where in which we can think differently. And I think that it was also the part of the conference that we can start to some extent think differently about our fields, about some habits of our fields we have. And I see this experience as something inspiring and encouraging for further work, no matter whether in theology or history or musicology, aesthetics, or in the art, or in the landscape, for example. So, thank you so much.
I would like to thank you, to thank all of you, because I've learned very much. And what Peter, okay, was saying now, I would like to, read all of your papers just before writing down mine, because I've learned very, very much from what I heard from you. And maybe that I would, there was some of you, I can't remember who exactly, who this morning used the word enchantment. And it was Pavel. It was Pavel. Because there's a book on Ambrose's hymns whose title is Enchantment and Creed. And maybe that this is a kind of oxymoron. I don't know the English word for oxymoron. But this, just like many oxymorons, it's true, and maybe it is what we have experienced during these days here: enchantment and creed. So.
Yeah, is it on? Yeah. I don't know what to say at the end. Ivana wished me before the conference meeting with delight, so, and I have to be honest that this conference, in spite of being soft, it was soft, I mean literally, in spite of being soft, it was really soft, which I'm very happy about. And I've met this light, or we can call it uncreated light, many times, encountering the people, synchronicities, meeting with the beauty as bringing unity and also crossing the boundaries. And so for me, it was one of the best conferences we've organized. Thank you.
Has the microphone, and she can pass it to anybody else who wishes. Tim.
Thank you. Thanks for everybody and for all the contributions. Maybe a couple of reflections, really, or points. I think what's kind of amused me, you kind of mentioned the Plato-Aristotle thing, but it's kind of seeing everybody struggling with their inner Platonist. It's quite nice, really. Either embracing or trying to escape from their inner Platonist. And, you know, there is there is the beautiful beauty exists, and how to, and you know, we either participate in it or whatever. So that's I've enjoyed that. The image that's been with me, and I don't know whether it's relevant, but it's an image which has been with me for the last 2 or 3 days, and it picks up a little bit on what Pavel Hošek was saying about the lion eating the antelope and whether it's beautiful. And I was thinking, well, if it's a nice antelope, then for the lion, yes. I mean, there's nothing like a good steak. But my image is another philosopher, one of my favorites, Emanuel Levinas, and his story of when he was prisoner of war in the concentration camp, and the dog who appeared at the fence and would come every day when they came back from hard labor and would joyfully jump around and bark and play with them. And that's a beautiful image, and maybe an image of beauty. And also, I just wanted to say we shouldn't forget the dogs.
Well,
thank you very much. I confirm what was already said, that either the topic or the papers were very interesting and connected to life or to interdisciplinary dialogue. What I especially liked this time was were the discussions after at the end of the blocks that were for me very interesting and inspiring, either the first evening or yesterday, but also the others. And it was especially, how to say, living this time for me. And I also liked I said it to Kateřina after yesterday's morning prayer, that it was nice that also we prayed together, or we stayed in silence, and we spent also some time, like the first evening in the garden. It was very beautiful. Thank you.
And I think for me one of the really important things, and I want to thank also to the Brno contingent that you stayed till the end, because I usually feel quite guilty that I am the terrorist, asking people if they want to come, they have to stay the whole time. Because we do not want to be just like the showing window when people come. It happens sometimes during this conference as well. When people come and sometimes travel even from a distance just to present only their work and then they go. Because it can be an inspiring moment occasionally, but it doesn't create the community that travels together. And I'm very grateful that we could walk together for a little time. And maybe just one small thing also to comment on where Jiří started the war. It felt for some time really very inappropriate to have this theme. And when the war started, and we haven't lived in Ukraine, but for some weeks we were just completely shattered with that. And tried to do all that we could, and it was never enough. And you felt complete inadequacy, and yeah, it was just terrible. And I remember that I think sometime around that time I read on Facebook the source of all kinds of things. A poetic letter of a Ukrainian father to his daughter that was in a different country, telling her, don't write to me about the war. Tell me how the flowers smell where you are now. Tell me if there are people or children you can play with. And I think something of that was caught yesterday in Andrei's presentation, and I'm really glad that you can be here with us. I think made me think, yes, that it is perhaps the most, we were struggling with this theme for a long time when we wanted to do it. But perhaps this has been the most important year when to talk about beauty. That will give us not a distraction, not even a distance, but a different depth, something which we should not forget, that sometimes when we least expect it, it is there. Anybody else would like to say something to the end? Jiří.
You can see now it is very dangerous to be with Ivana in Greece.
So, thank you, Kateřina. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Zdenko. Thank you also for the recording. Thank you, Jiří. Thank you, everybody, for making this event possible. And thank you, Pavel, for the beautiful liturgy and the prayers to all of you who organized them. Enjoy the lunch, and next time, somewhere.